John here, and today we're going to do a paid request, which this is for Kevin. If he's watching, thank you, Kevin. He wanted me to talk about and share some thoughts on Game of Thrones episodes 1 through 3, which I have always heard of the show. I mean, considered one of the greatest shows of all time, this and that. And I watched these episodes last week. And I have to say, for me personally, and I know this is going to be controversial, a lot of heads are going to explode here. But for some reason, I tried. I could not get into the show. Now, I know saying that there's going to be some comments, feedback, down below saying that I should give it more of a chance and just keep watching. It's going to get better. There's a lot more to come, which there is. It went on for quite a few seasons. And I do remember when the finale came out, a lot of people were pissed off. And prior to doing this request, I have never seen any of the show. Again, I've heard so much about it, how popular the show is and this and that. But the thing is, when it comes to fantasy, I have to, it seems like for me, like I do enjoy some fantasy stuff, but I have to sort of be in the mood, especially when it's like long and drawn out. Now, okay, for example, Lord of the Rings, which I would say I was more big on like back in the day when the first movie came out, Fellowship, which I would say out of the three, that is my favorite. But, I don't own those movies. I haven't seen them in a while. And I just think with fantasy, it just depends. Going back, there's stuff that has fantasy that I've enjoyed. A case in point, the Never-Ending Story, Willow, the Conan movies, Dragonheart is fun, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, the Hercules series with Kevin Sorbo, and so much more. I mean, I even wrote down here some stuff that, fantasy that I've enjoyed. Yeah, The Princess Bride. The Princess Bride is a classic. So there's quite a bit of fantasy that I enjoy. But, I know this is more story-centric. It's more about character building. It's more about, exploring these worlds and what have you. Now, it's based on the best-selling books by George R. Martin, again, which I have never read the source material. I don't know too much about the books. I know it's a medieval fantasy depiction of two powerful families where you have kings and queens and knights that play this deadly game of control. And episode 1, Winter is Coming. So the characters here with this show, you have Sean Bean in it, which of course he was in Lord of the Rings. He was also in GoldenEye. He's a good actor. And he's not bad here in the show. I would say, before I get into the cast here, like for me, I would say people that really stand out for me, Peter Dinklage. Despite what he said before about the whole Snow White BS, he does a good job here in the show. And I would say like Sean Bean, Mark Addy. Mark Addy's character, he's a king here. Now going back to Sean Bean for a second, his character is a Stark, Lord Stark. Ned. And I mean, there's quite a bit to the, even, starting off with the first episode here. So basically, I'm looking at one, like a whole, basically a synopsis. But to give you something a little bit more quicker. So Sean Bean, he's torn between his family and an old friend when asked to serve at the side of King Robert Baratheon. And I'm probably butchering that name, but basically, like Mark Addy, he's the king in this episode. And I'm sure, he's in more. Mark Addy, you've seen before. He was in A Knight's Tale. I remember he was Fred Flintstone in that second Flintstones movie. And I know that's a, bit of a random one. You also have in this Emilia Clarke. You have Kit Harington, who is Jon Snow. You have Richard Madden. Again, Peter Dinklage in here. So I would say, if I talk about the acting is not the problem. I think everybody does a fine job acting-wise. I think there's characters that stand out more than others, but the acting is not the problem for me. And this first episode here, there was some interesting stuff with the first episode. I will say, I will give credit to the cinematic worlds that they create here and what they were able to pull off with, the landscapes and the locations. I mean, everything is well shot, well filmed, and everything is, very vibrant in terms of, production value and set pieces. And again, the acting is not bad. But for me, I can't really get engaged, by the characters or the story. And I know, some people are going to say, just wait, it's going to get better, keep watching. There's more to come. There's more that's going to unfold and what have you. And I get it. It's more about, again, building these characters, building and layers to the story, layers to the plot. But I just have a hard for me, I don't know what it is. I'm trying to get into it, but I was really forcing myself. And again, fantasy, I don't hate fantasy. I don't hate, slow burn. It's not that, I don't understand it, or I'm not, I lack the intelligence and stuff like that. It's just something about, this type of, especially, drawn out, fantasy. Just, I don't know, for some reason I just can't get into it as much. But, going back to the first episode here, again, I really enjoy, I'll give credit to the worlds that they create here and the set pieces. It's well shot. It's well lit. I don't mind some of the characters, even little things, the beginning of the episode. I remember you had these characters in the forest and these guys are attacked by this supernatural force or this creature called the White Walker. So, immediately, it hooks you in. You're automatically hooked by the first 5 minutes. It kind of feels like a horror fantasy. And then when you get into the story, again, you have, different characters in here. And I try, I've seen these episodes, but it's been like a week or so, week and a half. So I'm trying to remember and place, who was who. I remember these faces and stuff, but So Mark Addy is the king. Again, Sean Bean is Lord Stark. You have the character of Jon Snow, played by Kit Harington. And Jason Momoa's in there. Like, they have their little subplot where Emilia Clarke is with this group, and there's even scenes where Emilia Clarke and Jason Momoa are doing it, and like I said, I know there's more to it and stuff that I'm not really, doing a great job explaining here. I'm not really going too deep into the synopsis here because everybody's seen Game of Thrones. Who hasn't seen the show? Everybody knows, what is going on here. I would say the more interesting aspects, for me, is whatever Sean Bean was doing or the character of Jon Snow. I didn't think that actor did too bad of a job. Peter Dinklage, his story, his character. And when you get, okay, like, there's some cool things there too, like the dire wolf, which that was neat. And you do have elements in there of, incest and stuff like that. And yeah, so, and like I said, when you do see, sex, you do see boobs, you see it all. It's HBO, so. But I mean, if I move on to the second episode here, The King's Road. So basically, at the end of the first episode, you have the character of Bran, the Bran character. He falls from the window at the top of the tower because he sees these two characters having sex. So they get busted, and so let me backtrack for a second. He doesn't fall, but he's pushed out a window, and yeah. So I will say, the end of episode 1, it leads you into seeing more. Like, you want to see what happens from here, because it ends on that note of the Bran character being pushed out the window. And, so in episode 2, The King's Road, Bran recovers from his fall. Ned takes only his daughters to the King's Landing. Jon Snow goes with his uncle Benjen to the Wall, which I like the look of the wall. And it's like this big ice wall. So, yeah, I don't remember too much about this one. But that kind of goes with, the first episode too. I mean, there's some elements here and there that, okay, that looks interesting. I like that. I like the look of, these locations. The set pieces are really, eye-popping. But again, it's just one of those, it's just, I know I keep harping on this, but, the characters, I can't really get invested in the journey. I can't really get invested in the story here. Again, the acting is not the problem. I don't have too many gripes about the acting, but it's just the flow of the story, the drawn out pacing. But anyways, I'll get to that. But yeah, I don't remember too much that happens here. I think by this point, a little bit, I was kind of getting a bit antsy. And then, so here, again, we have things going on between characters. We have, a bit of politics, and what have you. And then episode 3, Lord Snow, which, this is where, the character Jon Snow begins his training with the Night's Watch. Ned confronts his past and future at the King's Landing. And, again, a bit of stuff happens here between characters. And again, I know I'm not really going that heavy into the plot, like breaking down the synopsis here, because again, everybody's seen the show. You know, who hasn't seen the show? I mean, it's up there. If everybody says, you know, this is the greatest show of all time, and I know, me just being nitpicky here, I'm sure I'm gonna get comments below saying, you know, oh, you just don't get it. You know, you just don't like slow burn. You don't like great characters. Well, to give you examples, there are shows out there that I think, for me, I enjoy more, like in regards to characters. Okay, for, example here, I enjoy Breaking Bad. I enjoy Better Call Saul. Even The Walking Dead for a little bit. Like, that to me, that show has more engaging characters. Like, I'm more invested into their journey and this and that. I mean, I think for me, and maybe too, those shows are not really fantasy, but, maybe I get more into that, kind of modern storytelling. Like, I can get more into those types of shows, again, whether it be a Breaking Bad or, a Better Call Saul or The Walking Dead, that there's a lot of slow burn, there's a lot of character building, this and that. I'm more interested in those plots. I'm more interested in those stories. I'm more interested in the progression of characters. And so it's not that I don't understand it. It's not that I don't get it. It's not that I'm not a fan of slow burn. But maybe I'm just more interested in that kind of, time setting. Like the medieval fantasy, I think for me, works, but like for me, then, works better in film. I mean, not to millions of people. Like, of course, there's millions of people out there that, enjoy this show. But, again, going back to episode 3, I don't really remember too much about it. Again, I mean, I kind of, I understood what was happening, but it just wasn't really engaging for me. So, and again, I know I didn't really go that deep into the stories here, the different subplots, because it's not just one story, taking place. You have these other, 2 or 3 different angles that's happening. Whether we're focusing on, Sean Bean's character, Peter Dinklage, his character, talking with Jon Snow. I would say those are the more interesting scenes, whenever Peter Dinklage, and I understand, everybody, praises Peter Dinklage here, because I think his character, I really liked his character here. And then you got the whole thing with Emilia Clarke, being accepted by Jason Momoa's character, and how to please Jason Momoa, how to, I think in the second episode, she's taught, how to please him. So you got quite a bit of that. But I would just say, for me, at the end of the day, when it comes to this show, okay, so if I give any credits here, like positives here, for me, the show it's a well shot series. I really enjoyed the set pieces and the production value and the look of the show. I give credit to the filmmakers, and then I enjoy the worlds that are, on the screen here, and everything is, again, well filmed and vibrant. The acting isn't too bad. I would say for me, the standouts are, Peter Dinklage, Sean Bean, Mark Addy. the guy that plays Jon Snow. But, for me, kind of getting to the cons, I think everything is, a lot of exposition, drawn out, politics between characters that doesn't really engage me. Like with each episode, I was getting more and more uninterested, and I was getting more fidgety, just like uneasy. And I don't mean that. And again, this isn't a rant. I'm not ranting on this show. It's just me being honest. Like, it wasn't my cup of tea. And I get, again, people are going to say, just keep watching. Things are going to get better. There's more to come. Things are about to get heavy and this and that. But, and I get it's more about the characters. It's more about, character building and the drama. But I'm just not engaged by these characters. I'm not engaged by the journey and the heavy dialogue, the dreary pacing. And I know millions of people would disagree. It's one of the greatest shows of all time. But I think for me, there's other shows that I mentioned that I rather watch, that build characters, that are kind of that, same of, of the, like other shows, that build up characters. I think I'm just not too big on the medieval setting. So I would say overall, at best, okay acting, and it's a well shot series, but it just wasn't for me. So yeah, but that's it for this video here. Thank you again to Kevin S. For the paid request. Yeah, just thank you, Kevin, for that. But yeah, so if you enjoyed the show, again, don't let this review, or this video deter you from that. Or look, some things, everything's gonna have a fan. I just wasn't a fan of this. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that don't like some of the shows that I mentioned, that I gave an example of, or, even some of the movies that I mentioned earlier. I just think overall with fantasy, I have to be in the mood for it. And that's kind of where I stand. So again, there's millions of people out there that will disagree with this video and probably try to, give it a thumbs down. I don't care. I mean, it's just me being honest. It just wasn't for me. It wasn't my cup of tea. There's other things out there that I'd rather watch, that has great characters, has great story and progression of story and stuff like that. I just think that for me, I'm just not too big on, the setting here. But that's it for now. Thank you again to Kevin. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.